out in the middle of the ocean, all by myself, with no life preserver, nothing, and struggling to keep my head above the water, and not having anyone there to help me. That's what depression is like. It's that sense of isolation and loneliness and despair.
Have you ever felt worthless and/or guilty? Are you easily irritated?
Do you have violent outbursts or trouble with self-control? Do you use alcohol or other drugs to help yourself feel better?
If so, you may be suffering from depression.
And you're not alone. The Center for Mental Health Services states that depression may affect as many as 1 in 8 teenagers.
Depression is a medical illness, not a weakness. It can affect a person's feelings, thoughts, and behavior, and it may contribute to problems with relationships. Hi, I'm Janie.
And I'm Steve. And this is Real Faith TV.
Depression is one of the most common mental problems. It is also one of the most treatable.
Feeling depressed is different than actually suffering from clinical depression. It's the difference between feeling depressed once in a while, for maybe a day or two at most, and clinical depression, where one feels depressed all the time. Clinical depression isn't something you can shake off and can last for weeks, months, even years. Depression, that's what we'll be discussing today on Real Faith TV.
Today we'll be talking with Bill and Mary, who will share with us their experiences and struggles with clinical depression and how their faith in God has been a key part of their recovery.
That's right, and I think their stories can help teens whether they suffer from clinical depression or everyday depression.
We also have a great music video for our topic today, I'm All Right by Bebo Norman.
And we'll check in with our studio guests, but first we ask some teens on the street.
People like my age, 16, 17, they think they're suffering from depression, when in all actuality, what they're depressed about is insignificant in the long scheme of plans. So basically what I'm saying is, people should not worry about the minor infractions that happen on one's life. So it's very key to just let things go and not get eaten up inside. Because then you wind up staying home all the time, and then you have no friends, and then it's true, you become truly depressed.
Do you think that many young people suffer from depression?
Yeah, probably.
Do you know anyone who suffers from depression?
No.
I really don't know. Maybe.
Not really. I don't think that at all.
Anything in between two like parts of your life, like middle age, old age, childhood, and like youth, I think you get depressed just because you're changing and you don't know how to deal with like going from one thing to another. So teenagers, yeah, they're depressed and due to hormones, obviously. And I mean, the thing is that teenagers often deal with their depression like in bad ways, and that's why it gets so much attention. Like they'll slit their wrists and they'll go and get drunk and they'll do drugs and they'll sleep with everyone. And that's why it gets so much attention, because they're young and that's illegal for them to be doing all that stuff.
Yeah. I don't think it's just teenagers. I think everyone gets depressed at one time or another. Some people to the extent where they need treatment, some people not. But like, it's not just teenagers.
Negative feelings such as anger, fear, and hate must be expressed in an appropriate manner. Depression results when negative feelings are turned inward on oneself.
It seems that teens are a bit more vulnerable to depression because of all the significant changes that they go through.
Right now we'll meet our guests, Beth, Jen, and Dan.
Now, do you guys think teens are more likely to go through depression? Why or why not?
I think so, because, well, I know a lot of my friends have gone through depression. I've seen a lot of it in my school. I think there's so much pressure on teenagers today to, have their lives so pulled together and to know exactly where their lives are going. And I think that really gets a lot of people down, in addition to all the other rough stuff that teenagers have to go through.
I think peer pressure, too, is a big part of it, because if you feel like you're not included and you feel like you don't have a lot of friends or you're not part of a group that you want to be a part of, sometimes people think it's the end of the world because they don't realize how many more important things there really are than just feeling included.
I think part of it is when you're a teenager, it's like you think you know everything and you think that this deal, it looks like such a big deal, and it's such a tiny thing when you look back and it's like, oh, that was such a stupid little thing, but you get so upset because at the time it's so important to you. In our Spotlight interview today, Bill and Mary share their experiences in dealing with depression. Let's check that out now.
My name is Bill, and I used to want to kill myself. it was a mental disorder called depression. It's hard to explain. I guess unless you've had it. I mean, it was like a bully inside your head. I mean, I remember once just being in the video store, going to rent movies with my dad. Perfectly good day, you know, pretty excited to be getting some movies. And just feeling this shame out of nowhere. I remember looking at him and, you know, thinking, oh my God, you know, I must be such a letdown. You know, he's a good guy and he's got me for a son. Boy, sorry. You know, sorry I couldn't be better.
It can be difficult with teenagers because teenagers are ordinarily moody and have mood swings, but you need to look at a variety of things when you're dealing with teenagers. A loss of interest in activities that they once really took a lot of pleasure in, feeling worthless, useless, unable to concentrate in school, parents who see a change in the child's schoolwork, drop in grades, that type of thing. Change in eating and sleeping patterns is a good indicator. There are multiple symptoms, and if a parent or a friend notices more than 2 or 3 of those symptoms, they can suspect that the young person may be suffering from depression.
I wish I could say, you know, this thing, my first reaction was just to get down on my knees and start praising God. It wasn't. It wasn't. First I drew more inward. You know, I became really self-centered. You know, my pain, you know, what I'm going through, you wouldn't understand, you know, and it's no comparison. I've got it worse, you know, you don't understand, don't talk to me. I'd be going through it and I just shut myself out, kind of. I mean, I tried telling my parents a million times, you know, I'd set this deadline. This weekend I'm going to tell them this, by this day I'm going to tell them, by, you know, winter break, they're going to know. And I'd always find an excuse not to. I mean, I don't know, I just, how do you tell your parents, you know, you really want to hurt yourself, you hate yourself? How do you look your own parents in the eye and tell them that?
In young people especially, you may see your friends giving away their possessions unexpectedly, or calling friends that they haven't seen for a while, and going to visit, which is their way of saying goodbye. Young people who speak about life being worthless, not having any value, or if they talk about depression, if they talk about suicide or putting an end to their suffering or their misery, you can consider that they are thinking about committing suicide, and it's not something that you should ever ignore. Even if they're just saying something for attention, which a lot of people feel, it's not wise to ignore that. It should always be brought to the attention of a professional, a parent, a teacher, a trusted adult, so that this person can get the help that they need. It should never be ignored.
It certainly takes a lot of courage to reach out and ask for help when you're going through depression like that.
You know, I agree with you. It does take a lot of courage. Even when he said that, you know, he's always been finding excuses to put it off, to tell his parents. Have any of you guys been depressed, or a friend close to you been depressed?
Yeah. I had a lot of problems with depression more towards my 2nd and 3rd year of high school, I think. I still deal with that now, but it really sort of came to a head during those 2 years when everything just sort of started piling up. I was an honor student, and you know, all that kind of stuff and all the pressure that goes with that. And somehow I got it in my head that I had to be perfect, and that's what everybody expected of me. And if I didn't do everything exactly right, then I wasn't worth it at all. And all this started sort of built up like during the beginning of high school. And I kept thinking, you know, I can really relate to what Bill said, because I thought so many times, you know, like, I really should tell somebody about this. You know, well, okay, so, you know, one day I'll tell my best friend, or I'll tell my mom, or whatever. And something just always came up and I'd never do it. It just never seemed like the right time. And then one night my mom saw me crying in my room and she asked me what was wrong. And I just lost it and told her everything. So she got me help. I was seeing someone for a while, and they wanted to put me on medication, but I wouldn't let them because no matter how many times I heard somebody tell me that it wasn't, like you said at the beginning, it wasn't a weakness, it was a medical problem, I still thought that there was something wrong with me, and like, you know, I should be able to control this. And so I never did, and eventually I stopped seeing this woman and, you know, ended up turning to other people, but it sort of worked out all right in the end anyway.
It is. I understand what you're saying, that, you know, it's hard to tell that first step to tell somebody, you know, especially, and when Bill said it again, you know, it is hard. You know, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of guts to take that first step and tell someone to get that help you need.
Well, I think we have more to hear from Bill and Mary, so let's check that out now.
Me and my dad were driving to this, I think, Army Navy surplus store just to get some clothes or something. And out of nowhere, we start having this heart-to-heart, you know, and I honestly believe it was, you know, God that brought it on. And I just, I told him, you know, Dad, I have a problem and I want some help. You know, I want to get some help. This is not healthy.
I think the most important thing is to listen, to be present to the person who you think is suffering. In our society today, kids have a lot of challenges to face, and they very often feel isolated and alone because of the way our society is structured. And the most important thing for a person who is suicidal or suffering from depression are emotional connections to other people. So I would say for a friend is to be there. Make yourself available to talk, to listen, and to encourage that person to get help that they need, and to help them understand that depression is not a character flaw. It is a physical illness. It has a physical basis, and it should be treated like any other illness with medication and with physician's care.
I went on antidepressants, and it felt great. It felt, you know, free for the first time, you know, and forever. I was normal. My thought process, you know, I just figured before it was normal to be like that miserable and stuff like that, and I was finding out it wasn't. And I mean, I was able to take my mind off of it. You know, I still went to therapy. I learned new ways to deal with it because he would be taking me off the medication. And I went to church, and I mean, my faith really got stronger in that amount of time. And then came November when, you know, I went off the antidepressants.
I know I have a couple friends that they might be suffering from depression, but like people say, oh, they just want attention and stuff, but you can't write that off. If someone is acting to show the symptoms of being suicidal or, you know, being depressed, it's something you have to make sure that you talk to them and, you know, you address that and you get them help, or you know, you talk to them and make sure that you're still friends with them.
Now, have you guys ever reached out to a friend who's been depressed? What did you do? What can you do?
I've actually had 2 friends come to me in the past talking about how they want to kill themselves and things. And the first time, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was scared and upset both times, but the first time I was terrified when my friend said this to me. And I was crying, and I was home alone, so I couldn't even go talk to my mom right then. I had to wait, and I decided the next day in school I went to the guidance counselor. And the person had told me this online, so I printed out the whole conversation, and I showed it to them. And I was terrified about what my friend would do when they found out I told, because I was the only person they confided in, and I was afraid they were going to be mad at me. But it turned out later in the hallway, I saw him in school that day, and he came up to me and he said, "Thank you." And I think that, first of all, the fact that he was telling somebody at all that he wanted to kill himself showed that he didn't really want to do it, because you're looking for a way out. So I think if they come to you and they tell you they want to do it, then go and take that next step to get them the help, because it shows they don't really want to do it and you need to do something to help them. And they won't be mad forever. They'll realize what you did was out of friendship, and they'll appreciate that.
That's very good advice.
You know, I actually had an experience like that. I mean, it wasn't a friend of mine, it was actually myself, that I was going through a lot at home and with school and everything, and it just got to a point where I was sitting in my room, I was on my computer, and I was telling my friend, that's it, you know, I'm gonna end my life. That's it. And I was basically, I see now that I was reaching out to him, you know, that was my cry for help. And it was the next day when I actually phoned my friend Dan and he talked to me about it. That was the first time I had ever talked to anybody about it, and that was the first time I actually felt good. And I thank him so much for that, for helping me. I mean, it doesn't help just like that. I mean, it's a process that people have to go through, and it takes a while. Like we said, might be a long time, but as long as you're going through that and getting the help you need, it feels so good.
Now, in your situations, you had a friend there, or you were the friend that went and got help. But I think sometimes that if you feel scared, or like if your friend told you, "Oh, I'm going to kill myself," you might end their friendship. Why do you think a friend would do that? Because I could see that happening in some cases.
Well, it's a scary thing. I think there's a sense of responsibility. And, when you know that a friend is that vulnerable, you don't want to screw that up. You don't want to, push them over the edge or whatever. I know I had a friend, my friend Lori, just like your friend Dan, was the one that really talked me through it and, got the emotional connection that Mary was talking about. And she's told me that she was terrified, that she didn't know what to do, and she was so afraid that she was going to mess me up. So I think that's why a lot of people don't want to get involved.
Yeah, I think it'd be scary. It's just something like you want to, maybe step back a little bit. It's like, well, I don't want to, say something that will make them sad. So, maybe I'll just stop talking to them and they'll feel better by themselves. Or, you don't get them help because you're afraid they might get mad at you. So then that makes things even worse. But if you have a friend who cries a lot or loses their temper over little things, they lose interest in life, they think life is meaningless, hopeless, or they have a significant change in eating and sleeping patterns, then you should encourage them to get help.
If they do not, it's important that you alert a responsible adult about your concerns. This is not a betrayal of your friendship. This is true friendship. It could save a life.
Sticking by someone in a tough time is often the test of true friendship. Next up, Mary and Bill will share with us how God's friendship carried them in their struggle with depression. Let's check that out now.
Even as an adult, I found that a lot of people don't see the correlation between faith and spirituality and getting well. And particularly with the depression, spirituality was integral to my recuperating because it helped me maintain the hope that disappears when you're depressed. One of the biggest problems with the depression is feeling that life has no hope, that your life has no value. And so for me, to continually remind myself that God loves me, that my friends care about me, I spent a lot of time in prayer. I forced myself to stay within the community of people who share the same faith as me, going to Mass frequently, receiving the Eucharist frequently. Sometimes when I prayed, I didn't feel anything, even though I used to always have a very powerful prayer life. But with the depression, that kind of faded away. But I kept at it, and I kept reminding myself of the cross, of the crucifix, and thinking that if Christ could get through that and face resurrection, experience resurrection, then no matter how bad things got for me, that there would be a resurrection.
I think I've grown to the point where, the good and the bad, I can really appreciate. I can really, I'm walking with Jesus either way. Jesus was glorified, Jesus was crucified, so the good and the bad, he's with you. It's almost like the story of the footprints in the sand. When you see that one set of footprints, it's not God that abandoned you, but he's actually carrying you, whether or not you feel it.
And I'm not saying that I didn't stumble. I came very close to suicide on several occasions. But I think that the prayer life that I had and the prayers that I received from my friends as well kept me going. And I don't think I would have made it through without it.
I guess, there's a lot I'm still learning. But, more than anything, Jesus has just given me hope from a literally hopeless situation. And I just look at that as, I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to be. I didn't know him beforehand, and now I do. So I can honestly say that nothing is going to be that bad again because I've got him, and I'm not afraid, and I know he's there. And you walk to Calvary, but 3 days later, you rise again. And I know that, and I guess, especially in the Eucharist, just feeling that, feeling his love, feeling his presence. I know he's there. It's almost like, sometimes you bet on a football team you think can win, But being with God, it's almost like betting on a team that's already won, because you know it has. You know it has. And you just put your confidence in him because he's already done it. He died, he rose. That's taken care of. You just put faith in him and you know it's going to be all right in the end.
Wow. How about you guys? How has your faith ever helped you or your friends in dealing with depression?
In my junior year of high school, I was doing really good. I had my grades together, and I was doing sports and everything was set. And like midway through the year, for no apparent reason, I still don't quite understand why, I just lost interest in a lot of things that I usually like doing, and I became really kind of depressed. And I wanted to tell my parents about it, but it just kind of sat for a long time. And I went on a retreat. It's actually a Kairos retreat. And that retreat was maybe one of the most life-changing things I've ever gone through. We were gone for 4 days, and it was prayer and reviewing of sacraments and just so much over 4 days, and it was so incredible. And by the time I was done that retreat, I felt totally changed. I didn't feel better yet, but I felt like I could get help and I felt I could talk to people. And that's one way that God really helped me out in a situation I'd never experienced before and didn't know how to handle at all. I'd never been depressed before in my life in that way.
It is weird how God works in mysterious ways, because I was dealing with my depression for a while, and I was getting help, but it wasn't really sinking in. And then I got called to do the interview with Mary, and it just, like, talking to her just opened my eyes, and I realized that God was still there, and everything, prayer was the answer, and I needed to pray more, and it just helped out when I talked to her, and it was all God.
The same thing happened for me when my friend Lori brought me to her youth group. And for the first time, I was surrounded with people that believed that God could help me, and believed that I wasn't as worthless as I thought I was. And I know that that was all God, and that really changed my life.
And that's really what it's all about. It just lets you know there's a hope at the end of your depression.
Yeah. It's important to know that being depressed is medical illness, not a judgment of what kind of person you are.
It helps for all of us to remember that the resurrection means that Jesus has power over all our suffering.
Jesus promised to be with us always. Prayer with good medical treatment can heal a person's depression.
How are you dealing with depression? We want to know.
Contact us through our website at realfaithtv.com or call us at 609-406-7402.
If you have experienced a significant loss of interest in activities or are feeling very low for more than 2 weeks, it's a good idea to get yourself to a doctor. Depression is treatable. There is hope and help.
Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you.
God bless you, and we'll see you next time on Real Faith TV.